Our next theory is unequal ecological exchange. Unequal ecological exchange theory builds on world systems theory by focusing specifically on environmental flows. It asks, how do resources, energy, and waste move across borders in ways that benefit wealthy nations and harm poorer ones? This framework helps us understand how environmental degradation is outsourced and how colonialism continues to shape who extracts, who pollutes, and who pays the ecological price. Some of the key thinkers behind this theory are Alf Hornborg, William Bunker, and Andrew Jorgensen. They argue that global trade is not just unequal in terms of labor and capital, but that it's also ecologically unequal. Rich nations import cheap resources and energy from the global south while exporting pollution, waste, and environmental harm. So environmental costs are disproportionately borne by the global south. This creates what some call ecological debt, a moral and material imbalance where the South bears the environmental costs of Northern consumption. Colonialism laid the groundwork for this system. During empire, colonized regions were reorganized around extractive economies, producing sugar, cotton, rubber, and minerals for export. We know this from world systems theory, but now we're focusing on the ecological impacts of this organization. Forests were cleared, rivers were diverted, and indigenous land stewardship was suppressed. These patterns continue today through multinational corporations, trade agreements, and development policies that prioritize extraction over sustainability. For example, the Amazon rainforest is often called the lungs of the planet. Yet, it's being deforested to grow soy and graze cattle for export. Much of this production serves markets in Europe, China, and North America. But the environmental costs, loss of biodiversity, carbon emissions, displacement of indigenous communities, these environmental costs are borne locally. Profits flow globally, costs are borne locally. Unequal ecological exchange also explains why some communities are more vulnerable to climate change. Nations in the global south often contribute the least to greenhouse gas emissions, but suffer the most from rising seas, droughts, and extreme weather. This vulnerability is not just geographic, it is systemic. Unequal ecological exchange theory invites us to rethink sustainability. It's not enough to reduce emissions in wealthy nations if those reductions rely on outsourcing pollution elsewhere. True ecological justice requires confronting the global structures that make some environments and even some people sacrificial. Next, we'll look at a concrete example, the global trade in electronic waste. It's a stark illustration of how discarded technologies from the North can become environmental disasters in the South, and how colonial patterns of disposal and disregard persist. Egbogobloshi is a neighborhood in Accra, Ghana. It has been a major site for informal e-waste processing. Here, it's easy to find discarded electronics from Europe, North America, and Asia. These electronics are dismantled, burned, and scavenged by informal workers, including children. This site offers a vivid example of unequal ecological exchange. The process begins in the global north. Consumers upgrade phones, laptops, and televisions at rapid rates. Just think about how often your phone company calls you to try to get you to get a new phone. I feel like they call me maybe once a month. Our phones, laptops, and other devices contain valuable metals, copper, gold, palladium, but also hazardous materials like lead, mercury, and flame retardants. When discarded, these items are often labeled as donations or recyclables and shipped to countries like Ghana under the guise of reuse. Once they arrive, though, some devices are not even usable. Informal workers strip them for parts using fire and acid baths. In the process, these workers expose themselves to toxic fumes and contaminated. This image is of an Agbogablashi scrapyard. It shows air thick with smoke, ground covered with broken screens and melted plastic, and a polluted water source. Health risks from working and living in this area include respiratory illness, neurological damage, and cancer. This is not just environmental injustice, it's also historical. Ghana was once part of the British Empire. Its economy was reorganized around resource extraction. Today, it remains in the periphery of the global system, receiving waste instead of wealth. The same logic that justified colonial exploitation, treating certain places and people as lesser than, now governs global waste flows. The workers at Agbogablashi are not protected by labor laws or environmental regulations. They earn a few dollars a day, risking their health to salvage materials that will be resold. Meanwhile, the companies and consumers who created the e-waste face no consequences, zero consequences. Think about how many phones and laptops you've gone through in your lifetime. I know I would need more than 10 fingers to count at this point, though I am a bit older than you. This is ecological exchange without accountability. Efforts to regulate e-waste trade do exist, such as the Basel Convention, but enforcement is weak. There are loopholes that allow waste to be labeled as used goods or charitable donations. I'm doing air quotes. The result? A steady flow of toxic materials from core to periphery. Out of sight, out of mind? This case challenges us to think critically about sustainability. Recycling is often framed as a virtuous act, but where does our waste really go? Who handles it and who suffers from it? I invite you to reflect on your own consumption. What products do you use that might carry hidden environmental costs? Where do these products come from? Where do they end up? The Agbogablashi scrapyard in Accra, shown here, became so hazardous that it was demolished in 2021 by Ghanaian authorities. Of course, this dismantling did not eliminate all e-waste processing in Ghana. It just pushed activities to other informal locations, often with similar environmental and health risks.